will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
All right, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cantina Club. This week, we're kind of going out to the Outer Rim and talk about some non-Star Wars content. We're going to review the film that was released on Christmas Day, Nosferatu. It's definitely not a holiday flick by any means, unless you're talking Halloween. So it's kind of interesting that they chose Christmas to unleash this upon the populace, but but they did. Anyway, so yeah, so while I was traveling to other planets during the holiday break. I met up with Gundark and we decided to go see this movie together. And that's what we're actually going to talk about. So I'm going to turn things over to our resident professor and let her take it from there.
Yeah, I wanted to say I was really, really hyped for this movie before seeing it, and I loved it. I also have a lot of qualms about it, which we can talk about later, but I loved it. And I also got to point out first that for those of you that are not familiar, it is an adaptation of Dracula, the Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. And I thought it was really cool that they acknowledged that in the credits at the end of the movie, because one of the famous things about the first Nosferatu, the old silent film, it was adapting the old silent film Nosferatu from 1922. It was directed by F.W. Murnau. And one of the really famous things about that film was that they had to change all the names of the characters from Dracula because Dracula was still under copyright whenever Murnau made that movie, and they didn't want to pay or try to get copyright ability to adapt that book. And so they changed the names of all the characters to German names, and they altered the storyline a little bit. And so it was real cool in the credit sequence at the end of this movie to see Bram Stoker's novel, finally get acknowledged as the basis of the storyline. But the original Nosferatu, Bram Stoker's widow actually brought a lawsuit against Murnau and his production company for making that movie and violating copyright. And the judge ordered that they destroy all prints of the movie. And so people thought for a while the movie was lost, and then they discovered some prints of it. So it's become one of the great silent classics in a weird way,
Yeah.
just by
Oh, I didn't know
accident.
that. That's well, you were actually telling me about that a few weeks ago, but that's really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I
I
think
didn't know about that.
it's kind of cool that they acknowledge that kind of history of the original film in their credits at the end of this film.
Hmm.
And then I was reading about the interviews with the director, Robert Eggers, and he talked about how he has been really interested in the novel Dracula since he was a kid. And he loved the original film Nosferatu from 1922. And he adapted the novel into a stage play for high school. And
Oh.
a stage producer was so impressed with it, he put it on in New York theater.
Oh, okay.
So I guess Eggers has had a long interest in this particular storyline and wanting to adapt it. And so this seems kind of like as a passion project for him. It's kind of a culmination of themes and storylines, that he'd been dealing with in his other films and stuff that he'd been interested in from the time he was a kid. So I thought all that background in relation to the connection to the original Dracula was interesting. And that's just for me because I teach literature and I teach Gothic literature, and I've taught Dracula now for decades. And I also teach cinema courses, and we do a lot about the different cinematic and TV adaptations of the novel. So I really enjoy getting an opportunity to see a new adaptation that pulled on former vampire movies and former vampire fiction, but also kind of did its own thing. Even though it's adapting the 1922 Nosferatu, there's a lot of difference from that movie as well. The production values, though, in this movie, maybe the best thing, maybe the thing that would be least controversial to this movie to praise would be the production values, the
Yeah.
direction, the editing, the production design, the sound design is incredible. We got to see this film in a movie theater. You really need to see it on a big screen with surround sound.
Hmm.
Okay, thanks a lot, Greedo. Welcome, Greedo.
What?
Welcome,
Uh,
Fox, or whatever you are. But there were moments in this movie like whenever just the dialogue, like moments when the vampire was speaking, that were just transformed into something really horrific. When you hear the sound going all around you, and you're like, okay, where is that?
Right.
So everything about the production design made it a really beautiful horror film. And I think that the section set in Transylvania may be the best film adaptation of that section of the novel that I've ever seen.
Excellent. Wow.
Because it was just all of that part in the castle, in Count Orlok's castle, was just so beautifully done and totally horrific, and it's building suspense and horror. The performances in that sequence were so good. So those to me were the things that were like really totally praiseworthy about the movie. Whether we have other things that we're going to disagree about, I don't know. So I'll turn over to you guys now.
Visually and sonically, I thought it was, especially visually, it was a kind of a gothic masterpiece. The way it looked, I was completely sucked into, that time frame and that feel, and it was just so dark and depressing and just unbelievable. But yeah, I loved the whole part from, especially the journey to Transylvania, and being in Transylvania, I was on the edge of my seat. I wanted to run. It's like, do not go into that castle.
No.
You need to run. So yeah, it completely pulled me in for sure. Very, very well done.
Okay, Greedo.
I liked it. I went to it. You guys saw it on Thursday after Christmas. I saw it on Friday. I went to the IMAX here, and I purposely picked a seat with 2 empty spaces on either side, and a whole group of seats were taken outside of those. So I thought there's no chance those single seats are going to get sold. Well, one did right next to me, and the guy came in and was just coughing the whole movie. And then, of course, I've been sick ever since then. I'm finally starting to get over it, but my voice doesn't even last through talking this long. But I was thinking the whole movie, like, because they're like, the rats, the disease. Crawling on the streets. And he's like, like right on my drink, the straw. Wow. I was like, oh, do I drink that or not? And so my best laid plans got screwed. But all the things you guys said, I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I knew Gundark, knowing her, and just all the Gothic history you have, and you know more about this than most people. I think you could probably. Think so. I think the movie probably could have hired you to help with this. But
right, exactly.
But just as purely as a movie, I went into it expecting fear, dread, Gothic horror, bloodshed. And what I got was an Eggers movie, which had all those things. But I was instantly reminded, oops, this is not, because the same thing happened to me when I went to see The Northman. I went, like, we're going to get some cool freaking Viking carnage and stuff, and lots of people challenging each other to fights and brutal bloodshed and a revenge story. And it was really more about the settings and the putting you in that space, sound-wise, light-wise, down and dirty. There was no apologies. It was about them, how they served their food, what the awful stuff, the drugs they did, how warfare, there's no heroes, there's no justifiable cause ever. All that stuff, it was about the time. It wasn't about the things I expected. It took me a minute, but it's still a great movie. But this guy has a different vision than other people, I think, of what he wants to bring to the screen. I would want to bring more adventure, more stakes, more the moment where the good guy holds out the cross and defies the vampire, and the vampire, you get to see, the vampire either crush that or, those are I want to see those confrontations. This was much more psychological warfare and eras against each other. What would it be? Rationalism versus romanticism, or Victorian era versus the Northman type era, where all bets were off. Paganism, what if it feels good, do it or justify it. It's part of your religion. There's spiritual forces everywhere. Victorian era, you're buttoned up to here. Anything you feel is probably wrong, push it down, push it down, push it down.
Exactly.
You follow the handbook. You follow the handbook of how you behave. And all of those conflicts were what was central here, and even down to the settings and everything. But it still pulled back on the Nosferatu imagery of the shadows, the shadow hand crossing over all the really cool stuff from the original was here, and they didn't overdo it.
Yeah.
The one thing they did overdo, or I'll criticize it, is there's just so many crescendos in this movie. And I will give super kudos to the soundtrack. I don't know who did it.
Absolutely, yeah.
The soundtrack's amazing. And in IMAX, we had a 1 billion watt sound system. I was deafened over and over because this thing it's like going to they wanted it to be this way. It was like going to an old German orchestra.
Yeah.
And then just watching them tune up over and over again, get as loud as they possibly can and then cut it off. Yeah. And, it wasn't like a modern movie trailer with the big booming sounds and sudden silence, but it was like build, scratch everything out of your eardrums, and then total silence. And but it was beautiful. You could hear every instrument, every stringed instrument in there. It surrounded you, and if you didn't feel dread, you have no nerves left because it gave you no choice. It's telling you the whole time, visually, auditorily. And I was watching, IMAX screen was the only thing I could see. I was right on the front row of part of one of the sections.
Oh, okay.
And so it's totally immersive. And I loved the parts, like you said, going through Transylvania. That's where the movie changed for me and drew me in. I felt like the relationship between the two protagonists wasn't strong enough. The movie was obsessed with the relationship, the metaphysical relationship between, what was her name?
Ellen.
Ellen and Count Orlok it was a little too much on that and didn't give us the strength of character of the core relationship that helped redeem that. But I think part of that was because we had to believe that Ellen was the central character and the strongest. She's going to end up being the strongest one, whose mettle is tested, who's destined for this, and who's actually prepared for it. Whereas the world has not prepared Thomas at all for any of this. He does not expect an elder count or whatever who's spending his money with him to enslave and abuse him. He does not understand any more than, put in extra hours at work or whatever. He doesn't understand what he's walking into, whereas she intuitively knows that it's evil.
Well, she was abused by the creature in the past, and she doesn't even really remember that until the Van Helsing character. And Willem Dafoe is wonderful as that character in this film too. He brings a well-needed moments of humor in the film. But he's the one who I think through hypnosis got her to remember that Count Orlok had visited her when she was a child. He had sexually taken advantage of her. It's interesting to me. Now, this is where we may get into controversial stuff.
Do you think he was physically there though, or was it a spiritual encounter across?
It could have been a spiritual encounter, but either way, the way they depicted it,
it's still a violation.
He was grooming her, like he was.
Well, when he grabbed her by the throat in a death grip, that no longer seems consensual, or it's going into a really weird. Like where you were, you're going too far there. This person wasn't prepared.
He's an abuser, and I wonder though. This is where it gets kind of iffy for me. There in reviews of the movie, like Rotten Tomatoes, the consensus is that it's equally repelling and attractive. And I'm like, that is the center of what Gothic fiction is. Every character that gets involved with a Gothic monster finds them some way attractive. There's something compelling about this, pulling them to it, but also repulsive at the same time. But I wonder if they didn't go too far with the repulsive aspect because I know we needed. Guido was saying before we saw this movie, he wanted a movie where we would have a really monstrous vampire finally, because we've romanticized Dracula in most of the recent productions dating back to the 1970s. You have Frank Langella as the romantic Dracula, romancing women, and carrying them away. And so, and we need us, and then we get Twilight now with the sparkly vampires. And this is just almost like it's directly trying to be antithetical to that and to bring you back to the monstrosity to the point that it really is, at some points, it is disgusting, you know? The creature is disgusting. And seeing her interactions with it at some points are disgusting. But I don't know that that's wrong. You know, I think it's almost like, to me, they were more restrained than Eggers could have been. And especially when I think about other films like his film The Lighthouse, which had like no restraint to me whatsoever in portraying sexual matters. You know, this movie, even though it focused on the sexual subtext of the vampire as like a sexual abuser and the vampire pulling on your own sexual desires to get you to give into it, you know, that can be unnerving and disturbing. But I think the movie showed enough restraint with that, other than the disgusting aspect of what the Count was and what he was like, you know, and the fact that she had to sleep with him at the end to destroy him. And I still don't know about that ending. I'm just like, I'm kind of torn about that ending. But
Yeah.
it's the original Nosferatu, and then the one that was directed by Werner Herzog back in 1979 ends with Ellen knows that if she is able to seduce the vampire and hold him until after sunrise, that the vampire will be destroyed by the sun.
Much more of a folklore that you could
Yeah.
tell to anyone type of story, whereas this one you're not going to tell to people below a certain age.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
right.
And-
How did she do? How did she accomplish that? Because you could say, "Oh, they had tea, and she told him puzzles, you know, mystery, and he couldn't figure it out." And then before he knew it,
And the
yeah,
the Van Helsing character had to tell her that and find it in his books or whatever of occult books, you know, that you but in the original movie, the vampire disappeared. It blew up in smoke, right? In the original Nosferatu,
yeah,
it was
this
fried
this
by the
this
sun.
was a mess.
Yeah, no, well, in the Herzog movie, I think what's happening is there's a kind of progression here. In the Herzog movie, he isn't fried by the sun. He's like this blue, ugly corpse at the foot of her bed. And the Van Helsing character comes up and puts a stake through his heart at the end of that movie. And in both of the other two Nosferatus, the Ellen character was more absolutely pure. She wasn't like a sexualized character like in this
Right.
movie. She had no prior history really with the vampire. It was her telepathic connection with her husband that made her horrified when she could feel her husband being abused by the vampire when he went to Transylvania. And the vampire, I think Rita watched the original Nosferatu more recently than I did, so maybe you can correct me in this. Did the Nosferatu vampire see Ellen's portrait before he came to the German town where he bought the home from her husband,
I
Thomas?
honestly don't remember, but probably because
I
the
know
locket he always plays a key role in all the Dracula
yeah.
adaptations, and I
And that's something
imagine,
that's not in the novel at all,
yeah,
by the way. You know,
there,
Dracula.
yeah, there had to be something there to connect the narratively, so I'd imagine so. But I honestly don't remember. I was kind of I watched the movie, but I was also bumping through parts of it and going back and rewatching parts of it because I had just had certain interests at different parts
Yeah.
of it, so I didn't just watch it straight through.
See, what's always got me about that part is it kind of set up a history of romanticizing Dracula, oddly, from
Yeah,
the first film, even though he is horrific in the original Nosferatu. He looks like a rat, you know, he doesn't look human at all.
Yeah, not at all.
It set up what becomes this pattern of romanticizing Dracula, where he has a romantic interest in a woman, and so he becomes, in later adaptations, more and more sympathetic until we get to the point, like in the 1970s, they had an adaptation with Jack Palance where he admits that the woman is the reincarnation of his dead wife that he lost in the Middle Ages. And then Francis Ford Coppola really picked up on that in the 1992, maybe the most popular recent Dracula movie, where he gave Dracula a whole medieval backstory about losing his wife, and then she's reincarnated as the Victorian woman that he becomes obsessed with, and he romances her. It's almost to me like this movie is trying to put a stake in the heart of that mythology, you know, and maybe that's why it is extra disgusting for the Count. You know, is Eggers seems to be obsessed in his films with monstrosity that lies underneath people's restraint, you know, and how hard it is for our systems of restraint, our social systems, our religions, our social cultural mores to control those things. And it seems almost like he's trying to put a nail in the coffin of this romanticizing this monster, by showing him as horrific and having all of the shots of them in bed together and everything. It
I think
bothers
it's.
me, but it seemed like it's necessary. I guess what
I
I'm
got
saying.
I got the impression that it was a little more than that, which made me highly uncomfortable and dubious of ever revisiting this movie ever again, because I think this movie. The undertones are throwing down a gauntlet to challenge things, to challenge your view, your reaction. I can't imagine why there were so many scenes of her going through these fits. If I had edited it, I would have cut that in half at least. She was still having these weird epileptic fits till the last minute when she should have been already, when she, and why in the world her and her husband had sex at the end
Yeah,
like they did.
that was a
That
the
really
worst
put me
scene I
off.
thought went too far, and also
Yeah.
the husband, the implication that the husband went back and had sex
Well,
with his wife.
people
Oh,
say
that
that
was way too much.
that,
Yeah.
that for her character it was important because it's acknowledging female sexuality and that she can dominate the relationship and get what she wants. And it was also she said, let him see us, let him see us. So she's throwing down the gauntlet to Orlok saying, I'm not your faithful
Okay. I
bride.
didn't pick up
I'm
on
getting
that.
my husband satisfies me, F you. So but it was creepy as hell.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of scenes in this movie were left in to challenge our Victorian ideals. Like
Yeah.
when she's having a fit, it starts as an epileptic fit, then she starts going into orgasmic
What it is okay.
emotions.
Let me comment on that right
So
away. Let me
you get
interrupt.
more and more uncomfortable, and your preconceptions are challenged and heightened as you go along.
What that is that, Eggers in an interview talked about looking at the work of Jean Martin Charcot, the Victorian French psychologist who did all the work on female hysteria, and he did like a famous series of studies where he would put women on display. He would put them under hypnosis in a medical theater for his students, and he would put them under hypnosis, and then he would instigate episodes of hysteria and he photographed it. And so you can look at the Yale Library collections on Yale Library's website. You can get for free. Where
No thanks.
He liked it. Yeah, it was like a lot of the actual poses Lily Rose Depp was in come directly from those photographs. I saw that when I was watching
Eggers is a freaking weirdo, is what I'm saying. Who draws that into their Nosferatu
story?
No,
I thought immediately I picked up on that. But again, this is because I have this background in Victorian fiction and in Gothic.
Well, you know exactly where it came from. I had no idea.
This seems to me like it's really emphasizing the idea of the mad woman as the mad woman was a way both to label women as mad. Women were much more often
and to minimize them and
yes,
sweep them aside, so you didn't have to deal with what their actual behavior was saying.
Their desires and everything are labeled as mad, so you can tamper down.
And the Van Helsing character says, in another time, you would have been a priestess.
Yes, yeah, that was a really interesting line.
And that to me, like paganism and sex magic. I just don't go to a movie. I don't go to a movie to see paganism, sex magic, and frankly, necrophilia. I don't go to a movie to see necrophilia ever. No. I don't ever want to see it. I don't even want to see it depicted for shits and giggles or whatever. Yeah. I don't need my morals challenged that much. I just don't need it. And so when they went that far, I was like, dude, you're different. You're definitely stacked different in the brain. The guy who did this is just deliberate. You can't ignore it. You can't just wipe it off and say, oh, but look how beautifully it was shot. I don't care.
I can see what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's why I asked you, is this guy going to have issues in the future? Are we going to find out he's sick? Or is he just such an artist that these boundaries need to be smashed and he's smashing them? And he's doing it artistically.
I hope that's what it is.
But I'll tell you, that last shot of the movie was sickening.
Yeah.
If there was ever anything, I know it was trying to be hopeful and reveal. We finally got to see how pathetic this force of evil was and everything, but it was beyond disgusting. Like when it faded to black, I think I just said, the theater was silent, and I went. I said that was bonkers, and everybody just busted out laughing because we didn't know what to do. Nobody knew what to do. We came to see a vampire movie and we got that at the end.
That's what I'm saying. We came to see a vampire movie and had this whole history of romanticizing vampires. And I think that is like, no, dude.
But let me ask you, has this guy, the director, become the draw more so than his movies? Like more so than what the movie, you can put out a movie saying, hey, it's a vampire movie. Hey, it's an Eggers vampire movie.
Eggers vampire.
Yeah, that's all I heard. That's all I heard was about him. And once you see a couple of his movies.
Hey, hold on. What's wrong with that? We've done that with great directors throughout.
There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. I told you, I think he's building an Eggers verse.
Yeah.
I think all these movies are connected.
All great directors
intimately connected.
All great directors tend to have similarities that go throughout their whole body of work to where you come and connect.
What would this guy do with MCU or DCU if they put him in with some? No, it would be undeniably good, but it'd be off the wall nuts,
Yeah, but I can see. Okay, Greedo, when he texted me after seeing this movie, he said he gave it 3.5 out of 4 syphilis-ridden maggots. So, and I know
I forgot I did that.
That's so like. I mean, I think this movie was a great vampire movie. It's going to go down as one of the really great adaptations of Dracula, but it's also profoundly disturbing. And it's definitely not going to be for everybody who wants to see a gothic movie about vampires.
It's weird. It's weird timing for me in an era where we are becoming more and more superstitious. To me, as an outside observer of society, it seems like we're becoming more and more superstitious, more and more suspicious for a movie to come out and say, there's science and rationalism, but guess what? We need to go back to paganism and sex magic to solve our problems because we don't understand what's going on, and they got it before us. It's like opening an old medieval scroll, which is full of flames, demons, madness, skeletons, decayed corpses. Beautiful, beautiful artwork, but frightening. There's nothing more frightening than medieval artwork. If you go back and look at it, it is disturbing. It is freaking disturbing. Once they got into the Renaissance and they began to leave the darkness of a lot of that behind, humanity becomes more hopeful. And who wants to live in the Dark Ages? That's what I don't get. But that's the Eggers touch, is he puts you in an inescapable moment in time. And you have to deal with it because the characters have to deal with it.
I don't know what's saying we want to go back to the Dark Ages because I'm thinking back also on his.
Well, that's how it made me feel.
The Witch. It seems to me like it's more of the flaws in current modern systems that think we're so civilized that we know how to control all these things, and we don't really. And we've got to realize there are limitations to these restraints that we try to set up to the point that. Sure. We restrain people to the point that we turn them back to that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the Witch was about the Puritan code and how that led to witch hunting Hysteria, and so I don't think he's supporting like a brutal medieval.
No, it's just the environment he sets it in. Since we're in the Victorian era and the threat is medieval, the solution is medieval. Therefore, and also he ties in female empowerment and all that too, which is good thematically. But we're in an era where there is no female empowerment. They're not going to achieve it tomorrow. So we're stuck with the darkness. We're stuck in the darkness with these characters, and that's what's hard about it.
That's what the original novel was, though. The original novel just has this tug and pull between empowered females and demonized females, and females vampire females that are
Dracula was not an animated ghoul corpse.
No, not Dracula. I'm talking about the female character. I was talking about the female.
But I'm just saying this movie seems in love with necrophilia, with death, and blatantly necrophilia, which you could just say is just an outside thing of it. But it's emphasized, illustrated, and gone into in great detail here almost, and it's too much for me. I'm not soft, but that's not what I expected. I didn't expect. Dracula has always been allure. The allure of Dracula is that you get to remain virile and potent eternally. Now his subjects decay and become ghoulish and monstrous because his will is stronger than theirs. They sell out. It's not in their nature. They were human. We don't know what he was. So he's demonic. He's more powerful than that. He can maintain it. This character is like male patriarchy, domination, sex drive, lust for power, just crawling forward, like existing as a malignant just a pile of malignance, and it can animate itself into a shape that is a shadow that is intimidating, but when you look at it in the light of day, it is a pile.
I find that theme very interesting.
It is interesting, but it gave me the freaking creeps in this movie. It just went beyond for me, and that's my main objection. And they did it on purpose, so I can't defend it. I can't just say, oh, it's fine, because they did it to me. They purposely showed me this stuff.
Let me make one other point that Guido, in our discussion after the movie, we chatted after the movie online, made about this is the other point in the original novel. There's a big emphasis on the vampire hunters, as heroes. They come together as a group in the last half of the novel, and you even have the female character Mina kind of leading them. She's smarter than Van Helsing in that novel, and they're able to work together and hunt Dracula down and put an end to him. And the novel takes on this kind of momentum where they're getting after them, and it becomes like this extended horrific nightmare. Like, how are they going to get him? He keeps getting away. And there were points in the movie where I really wanted that. I agree with you.
Yeah,
you said you wanted an emphasis of a good against this horrific evil that we see.
Yeah, I wanted to see the strength and dynamism of some kind of good, even when it's an old Catholic or whatever. The cross. At least you know what it is, and it's strong in opposition to the evil. This was just like corruption. This was death. The Dracula in this is death, and it's a medieval concept of death, inevitability, fate. So you don't get any, even though it would technically be romanticism, the whole thing. It's not a romantic image in my mind. An appealing image. It's I don't know, but it's cool from a horror standpoint. But if you notice, the people he corrupted, he never turned anyone into a vampire directly that we saw.
Yeah.
And if you were, the only vampire we saw was a corpse that just spewed when the gypsies killed it. So it went back to the old thing of like, vampires are just things that rise up and haunt the living, but they have no intelligence, they're not living in a castle organized. In the past adaptations, Dracula is reproducing himself in some way.
Yeah.
He's extending his vileness through his minions, his vessels. This, I'm not sure what he was doing other than trying to possess her. And so it comes down to male versus female energy again, just a constant theme in everything since 2000 or whatever. And the male energy in this was just despicable. and it was death versus life. They even came out and said it a few times, like women can give birth, men just can't even see the whole picture. They have no idea what they're doing. So I don't know, but I liked it. I can't let go discussing it without saying how sick it made me feel, by the end. And I was sick afterwards. I'm still sick.
Exactly.
See, I have that feeling about Eggers' film The Lighthouse, which neither of you guys have seen. Even though I loved it from the first shot of it, it was so gothic and the cinematography was so beautiful. It had two incredible performances by the male leads, and they were the only real live characters in the film. But it was way over the top with the sexual stuff, where it just and deliberately at some point seemed disgusting, and so it's difficult.
You know how much I dislike the idea of Dracula being a romantic hero, anti-hero.
Yeah,
I'm not into that.
You were wanting a monstrous Dracula.
Yeah. So I asked for too much. I got what I wanted. I'm like the girl at the beginning. Come to me, vile Dracula. Come. No, stay there. No, you're too close now. No, don't lay in the bed naked like that. No, that's too much.
But I did. I want to finally say that I did like references to other vampire literature and films and everything. I felt like it built a lot on a whole body of vampire stories from movies and fiction, printed fiction that reference things really well. Just small things like this vampire bites in the breast, that comes from Carmilla, the novel that inspired Dracula, and that also would then become thematic of, instead of getting in the neck, the breast, your heart, it's very symbolic. That's the center of your soul. So it's little choices like that where they choose things from former vampire literature and then build it into the significance, the meaning of their film, I thought was really well done. So it's stuff like that, and the fact that it's kind of putting a tail into a romanticizing of Dracula that we all have had kind of problem with.
Yeah.
And when you read the novel, you really have a problem with it. I participated in the Dracula Daily thing last year, which is an email newsletter that sends out in real time the chapters of Dracula for about 6 month period. The novel itself is divided into journal entries and letters written by the various characters over a chronological 6 month period. And Dracula Daily, this guy put together an email newsletter that sends out those episodes every day, for about 6 months. And you get an episode from the protagonist in your mailbox. He talks about once upon a tomb at Castle Dracula. And I participate in that, and there's a big online community that does that, and they do commentary on every episode, as it's coming in your mailbox every day. And there were people that had never read Dracula before, and they're like, holy cow, this Dracula dude, he's an abuser, he's a gaslighter, he's awful. And then there's just waves into developing the online community against all of those movies that romanticize him. And the romantic movies, I love Bram Stoker's Dracula, the Francis Ford Coppola adaptation. I love that adaptation. But there's also, it's romanticizing Dracula in part for a reason for the time that the movie was made. But there's also a moment where you want to see the real monster of the novel. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And I feel like this whole online community has been pushing for that. And it's really popular, viral online community where they run this novel every year now. And they've been really wanting to show Dracula for the abuser that he is. And so we're starting to get movies like Last Voyage of the Demeter and Renfield, where Dracula, I love Renfield, where he is an abuser and Renfield has to go into therapy to get rid of him, to go into a support group to deal with.
So, I like that movie as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this movie is kind of in that vein now. So it's also interesting to me where it's placed in the overall arc of adaptations. But yeah, I have some of the same qualms you do, although not to the degree you do. And that may just be because I have such a long history in dealing with weird sexual stuff in vampire fiction.
I want to say one more thing on this subject of Eggers and the point of view of this whole movie and everything and how it affected me. I sometimes have out of body moments when I'm watching a show or a movie where I realize there's a character that is talking straight to the audience or is revealing something straight to the audience. And I felt like Mr. Knock was that character in this. And the moment when they open the coffin and you get the wah wah of it's not Orlok, it's Knock in there, and he says, I was going to be Lord of Rats, but look at me. Which Lord of Rats is a pretty low bar to shoot for, right? But he's even lower than that. And he says something like, rain down your blows, for I have become blasphemy. And to me, I was just like, it was a shock in my seat. I was like, I just feel like the director just spoke directly to me there, saying, this is a message to critics. Like, I'm a Lord of Rats. I don't care. I have become blasphemy. Rain down your blows. They won't affect me. I'm more miserable already than you could ever make me. This is my life's work. I'm exposing this, and this is the way I'm going to do it. And let your negative reviews come. Let your negative thoughts come. Also, it is blasphemy. The movie is blasphemy, and in a lot of ways, there's a lot of heretical, without being overt as far as attacking religion. It's deeper than that. It is paganism and sex magic in ways that I've never seen drugged through an entire movie like this unless you knew about it. I just didn't expect it. It's like there's movies that go there and that's their whole premise and that's why they're creepy as hell. Rosemary's Baby, maybe. I don't know. There's a lot of them that explore these things. But this was very deliberate to the point where we had a character explain it to us, This is what it's about. And he was the infallible character who just everything he said was correct for some reason.
The Van Helsing.
Yeah, he could have at least guessed wrong a few times before he got to the right answers, but he was the Spock of this movie. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. Great looking movie. I don't know if I'll ever have the guts to watch it again, but if I do, I'll definitely focus on the first half because I loved all the castle stuff. And when Thomas I didn't expect it when he got pissed and he woke up and he'd been sucked or whatever. And he woke up and he said, screw this. And he went and looking through smashing doors, looking for shit. And he found the coffin. That was my favorite sequence. That sequence totally kicked ass. The way the Count went, sent his shadow under the door to grab him by the throat and say, open the door.
That was
and
good.
the shadow became his will. Yeah, that was fucking cool. And then he's standing there and the two wolves come up beside him. And you're like, oh shit, it's on. It's on now. That I wanted more of that. I wanted more of the direct confrontation with evil, more than just the sex magic and the psychological. By the time she had her 100th fit and the soundtrack was screaming at me for the 100th time, I was a little fatigued. Carillion, you've said nothing. Do you have anything to add to this conversation? Because we have dominated it, and I apologize.
I know. I knew that was going in. You guys are way more steeped in the lore than that. Yeah. No. I just overall.
I just have more issues than you do, probably. Psychological, deep psychological.
I enjoyed the film for what it was. I talked about earlier. I enjoyed the aesthetics of it. The Gothic beauty of it, as it were. I thought that was incredibly well done. And I know that Gundark and I touched on this a little bit when we talked after the movie, when we saw it together, was I got that, to me, the parts of that movie, the way it was shot felt almost like I was watching a stage play. Because it was just so, even though it was very expansive at parts,
the backgrounds were static at parts.
Very claustrophobic at parts. Static backgrounds, and just that breaking the fourth wall. Looking directly into the camera, talking, and then it switches immediately to the person they're talking to, breaking the fourth wall, looking back.
That's part of the dread, though, because you do feel like you're there and you want to leave the room. You're like, I can't get out of this room. Right. When you were in the Count's chamber with the table. All the scene where he cut himself and everything, and the Count is staring directly at you, and he's coming across the room. You're like, no, pal, no. But you feel like you're in a dark theater. You feel like you're in that room, and there's no way out.
So just to let you know, we are 45 minutes into our 30 minutes that we allotted for this.
Let me end with one final
So I just wanted to see if there's anything you wanted to wrap up with. Or...
Yeah, I want to end with one final recommendation.
Yeah, the Mummy.
Sure.
If we're talking about other movies, this might be related to. If you saw Nosferatu and you're interested in it, you might go back and watch Shadow of the Vampire from 2000, because Willem Dafoe, who plays the Van Helsing character in this Nosferatu, actually plays the Nosferatu in Shadow of the Vampire.
Okay. That's
and
right.
That movie,
and it's a great movie.
I saw that.
It's
freaking great.
It's about the making of the original 1922 Nosferatu, and Willem Dafoe plays Max Schreck, the actor who portrayed Count Orlok in that film. And the conceit of that movie is that Count
Orlok,
he's actually a vampire. The actor is actually a vampire.
Right,
and John Malkovich.
But are the demands of the average method actor any worse than actually being a vampire?
Yeah, true.
But it kind of gets maybe to some of the themes of this Nosferatu with less disgust, because the Murnau finds out that his lead actor is a vampire, and he won't quit filming. That's the key to the whole movie, is like, where is the point where you draw the line? He's so obsessed with it, he won't quit filming. So that one was a really good one to look at in comparison to this movie, I think, and does some of the same things, but maybe with a little less distaste. This movie might carry for some audiences. So, yeah.
If I ever walk into that crossroads in this movie with the woods all around, just leave me for dead. Because if I ever look around and I'm in that place, it's over. That place was the most frightening place on earth.
Yes,
where the carriage pulled up.
Yeah.
And the gypsy stole his horse, so he had to walk in there.
That was insane. Yeah.
He's like, dude, know when to give up. I mean, know when to go back.
Yep. Wow.
That was literally I love that they made it a cross and a crossroads.
Yeah.
And the place where he could, you can go forward or back, and the carriage came for him. And there's no freaking driver, and he still got inside.
There's that moment that came from the 1931 Dracula, where he gets in the carriage at the crossroad, and he sees Bela Lugosi's eyes turn down, and he tries to speak to him, and Bela Lugosi won't say anything. He just looks at him like, dude, don't get into that carriage.
Nope.
Do it. And then he does that. But yeah.
At least he didn't take the manual about Nosferatu from the night before and spike it on the ground and laugh at it like the guy in the original did.
Yeah.
Oh, Nosferatu, what is this shit?
What is a vampire?
Yeah, because he saw the light of day and he's like, oh, nothing can hurt me in the light of day. He had the whole script of the movie written right in front of him and he just didn't even, he just, this seemed creepy last night. It's hilarious today.
Yeah.
Then he went and got the creepy carriage with the cab driver that was like, with the whip in his hand, just posing. It's like, don't get in any. It's a bad Uber. It's a bad Uber experience.
Bad Uber
You're not
experience.
going to get to rate it afterwards. So anyway, what will we say? What will we give this movie on a 1 to 10?
I give it 3.5. No, I give it 4 out of 4 syphilitic maggots.
So out of 5, 4 out of 5, 4.5 out of 5. You're saying?
Oh, well, I'll give it. I thought we were doing 4 out of 4. I'll give it a 4 out of 4 for what it is.
Okay, I don't know what Sumerian math we're doing now, but if we're doing 4 stars, okay, I'll give it 3.
Okay, yeah, I'll go right in the middle, 3.5.
And I will actually say, I feel like this is a don't miss movie of this last year and this coming year. Like if you're gonna pick 5 movies to watch this year, there's a lot of throwaway stuff. Whatever this is, it's not throwaway. And if you want to gaze into the mirror darkly, look into the pit and learn something about yourself, this movie will do that as well. So, and it's deeply beautiful and disturbing at the same time. So, just if you're a fan of movies at all, I think those people have already seen it probably. But
that's a good final assessment.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
agree.
Well, let us know. Let us know what you think down in the comments, everybody, and we'd love to hear what you think. We obviously the 3 of us recommend it for various reasons. Some with more hesitations than others, but but overall, if you're into that gothic vampire Dracula story, this is there for you. So check it out. All right, thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
I want to suck your blood.
I still love sitting next to Gundark in a theater.
Her reactions are priceless. Yeah,
just the giggling at the worst, most heinous scenes.
All of the stuff with Renfield and the babies getting killed when he threw that baby.